Question 23. The sum of the first 48 terms, so the sum of the first 48 terms of an arithmetic series, is 4 times the sum of the first 36 terms of the same series. Find the sum of the first 30 terms of this series. Now, there's a lot of information going on in this question. And although this is what the question's asking for, with these typical arithmetic sequences or series questions, really that's an afterthought. So I'm just going to scribble that out just now. We're not actually interested in that right now. You've got 5 marks worth of marks to pick up in this question, and focusing on this is never going to help you with these types. You've got to look at the information that's given and kind of start from there. So the mention of sum of in both the green part and the pink part here and here indicate that we're going to be using the formula that's given in the formula sheet, which is the sum to n terms is n over 2 bracket 2a plus open bracket n minus 1d, where n is the position in the sequence, so how many terms into the sequence you are, a is the first term, d is the common difference, in other words what this sequence goes up or down in, and Sn itself is the sum of. So with what's been given in green, the sum of the first 48 terms, that's basically talking about S of 48. The pink one, when they talk about sum of 36 terms, that's talking about S of 36. So those two statements there are talking about those. We have this whole 4 times, which we'll get to that in a moment. Basically, the green one, the sum of the first 48 terms, is going to be 4 times as much as this. But of course, we need to really figure out what we're going to end up with on the right-hand side for each of these situations. So for the green one, we have n as being 48, because we have 48 terms into the sequence. We got over 2. We don't know what the first term is, so I keep that as a. Our n here is exactly the same as our n here, is exactly the same as our n here. We are 48 terms into the sequence. So I'm going to have 48 minus 1. D is a common difference in the sequence. We don't know that yet. So we end up with that. That simplifies to give me 24 brackets 2a plus 47d. And then that's going to simplify even more to give us the following. S of 48 is going to be 48a, basically breaking out this bracket by multiplying both of them by 24. And 24 times 47 is going to give us 1128d. Okay, that's as far as we can get so far with the information that's been given there in green. As far as the pink one goes, we pretty much have a similar looking thing here, except instead of 48s going in, we're going to have 36s going in. So I have 36 over 2, 2a plus, in a bracket, 36 minus 1d. And then when we simplify that a little bit, we end up with an 18 outside the bracket and a 35d inside. And then when we're multiplying that out, we're going to end up with S of 36 is going to be a 36a, and we're going to have a plus 630d when we multiply that bracket out. So what we have here is that all of this statement here, with the exception of the 4 times bit, but the green bit and the pink bit, we have written there and there. Now we can actually make the link of this 4 times. What's in green is 4 times as big as what's in pink. So 4 times what's in pink will equal what's in green. So I can create the following equation. That is 48a plus 1128d equals 4 times 36a plus 630d. Okay? And I can go ahead and simplify this. So I'm going to end up with, still going to end up with the same thing on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we're going to end up with 144a 2520d, like so. After that, it's a case of we can simplify this a little bit more. or start rearranging. We have a's on both sides, we have d's on both sides, so we can go ahead and start, playing around with that. If we take away 48a from both sides, then we will end up with a 96a on the right hand side. And why not get the d's on the other side? If I take away 2520d on both sides, then I'm going to end up with 1128 subtract 2520, which gives me the following, minus 1392d, like so. So that's as far as we've got so far by using the information that's been given there, as far as the sum of the first 48 terms, the sum of the first 36 terms, and then the fact that we know that one of them is 4 times as big as the other. This is as far as we have managed to get. Okay, we haven't figured out what A is, we haven't figured out what D is, but we can get either D in terms of A if we divide both sides by minus 1392, or we can get A on its own if we divide both sides by 96. Now, whichever way of these you would choose to go afterwards, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to just show both. If I divided both sides by 96, I'm going to end up with A being negative 14.5 d's. And if I took 96 and divided by a negative 1392, I'm going to end up with the fraction it gave me was 2/29. So I'm going to minus 2/29 A, like so. Okay? So we have one of those values of A and D in terms of the other one, whichever way you choose to look at it. Question now is asking us, find the sum of the first 30 terms of this series. So the first 30, sum of, means we're going to be using that exact same formula as we did before. We're going to have an S of 30. We're going to have an n over 2. What are we? We're going to have this n over 2, bracket 2a plus n minus 1 in a bracket times d. So n is going to be 30. I can go ahead and plug that in right away. What we do next is entirely personal preference. You have two choices here. You can substitute your A value as this inside pink, whereas this would give us a D. Or you could choose to plug this value here, and then this one will be an A. It's entirely up to yourself which way you choose to do it, okay? What would I choose to do? I am going to choose to plug in, I prefer to plug this one in rather than this, just because minus 14.5 is slightly nicer than negative 2/29. So I'm going to replace A with this minus 14.5D. So let me just give enough space for it. Minus 14.5D, like so. We then have a plus, just highlighting, you got that plus there, 2 times A first, and then adding this bracket, so that's 2 times A here, adding this bracket, and we've got a D on the outside there. Dust's going to settle a little bit here. Something magical happens. When you multiply this out, you're going to end up with a minus 29D, because you double negative 14.5. This term here, 30 minus 1, is going to give us a plus 29D. And what actually happens here is that inside this bracket, we end up with a 0, which means the sum of the first 30 terms is 0. Now, this is a pretty unique situation in terms of these types of questions, because a lot of the time when you use the information that's given here, you will get some sort of conclusion or be able to figure out what A is and what D are, what the A is and what D is. Whereas this question doesn't actually give you enough information. It tells you what A is in terms of D, or it tells you what D is in terms of A, but you've still got to kind of keep going, because at the end of the day, we did all that was possible with that statement here. And then it's a case of, well, the question's asking us to figure out this, and as long as you can get to an answer, then we have achieved what the question's asking for. We have found the sum of the first 30 terms. We've used the formula with n is 30. I should really highlight that here. N is 30. And then whether or not you're subbing in A in for, sorry, minus 14.5D in for A like I've done there, or if I had decided that I was going to sub this in here instead and keep this as an A, I would have ended up with exactly the same thing. In fact, I would have ended up within the brackets a 2A minus 2A is what would have happened there, but I would have still got this 0 no matter what. So whether or not I replaced A with stuffs in D or D with stuffs in A, we're always going to get A. It is a very tricky question, but yeah, that's the answer there. Sum of the first 30 terms is 0. Done.